name is Margaret Brandstetter, and this is a reflection on my language and literacy innovated lesson that I implemented. I implemented this with my 3-year-old or 3.5-year-old niece. I do not work in preschool right now at this time, so I used this lesson on my 3.5-year-old niece, and she did pretty well overall with it. I do have to say, I know we have to talk about things that went well and things that I would change or add. Um, and I think I would just change that this lesson, is more geared for a little bit older children, like TK age range, 4 and 5-year-olds, 5.5, 6-year-olds. There's just a little bit more complex information in here that 3.5-year-olds don't totally grasp, but it was a good introduction for Jazriel. She did pretty well overall and was interested. My theme was hibernation, and I chose hibernation because animals foster a curiosity about the real world, and it creates an excitement for learning. Children love learning about animals, and they get excited about it. And I also chose hibernation because it gives it gives the children a chance to see animals in their real world. A lot of times they see them on cartoons and different things like that, and they're acting like people. So this actually gives them a chance to see animals acting the way animals really do. Um, my objective was in language and literacy, and this was for the children to listen and comprehend new vocabulary. There's so much new vocabulary and more like tier one or tier two, tier three words that children can learn from this type of theme. It also science. Children learn about science, and my objective was for children to identify the behavior and of animals during particular seasons. It also gives them a chance to see the different changes in seasons. Um, we started with the wordless interactive picture book, which was the one we developed for this class. I read the story and I introduced Jazriel to new vocabulary, and she did ask some questions. I asked her questions while we were reading the story as well. Um, we talked about the change in weather and what it felt like and different things like that, and how animals change in behavior during the different changes in weather. We had a sensory, normally this would be done on a sensory table in a preschool, but I just did this activity outdoors in the backyard. I used, a bunch of ice, and I put it on the ground so that Jazriel was able to see how the environment changes when it snows. Um, I asked her questions and we talked and created conversations. And then after the project was done, we reflected on what we did and what we, talked about in the story. Um, and it went pretty well. Jazriel really liked the book, the picture book. Um, the materials I needed were a laptop, the wordless picture book that I developed in this class. I found some miniature animals and trees and different plants, and I used the outdoor area to show Jazriel, how when it snows, it changes the ground and the plants, um, and animals have to find shelter and things like that. We used ice. I used some crushed ice to show her the changes. And as we were reading the story, as you can see, Jazriel was I used the computer. Jazriel was very excited when we were reading the story. She was pointing to things. I asked her what animal this was, and she said snake, and she named the different animals. I asked her what was happening outdoors, and she said snowing. I asked her, how she felt, and she pointed, and she said it was cold in the snow. And then when we did the sensory play, I showed Jazriel, I showed her how the ground was not covered with ice yet. And I told her when it snows, this is what happens to the ground. And we talked about how animals need to find shelter and places to live. Um, we talked about, the mouse went in a cave, the frog, found a place in the tree. And I showed her, I found a little, thick piece of wood that showed like a log. And Jazriel played in the ice and she saw how the animals needed to find shelter. We talked about how the weather changed. And then this is the interactive storybook I used. Um, this is what I used for her to look at, and she really enjoyed watching the animals move and come alive. I think the thing I liked most about this activity was that it got Jazriel very excited. She liked talking about the snow. She liked playing with the animals. She liked touching the ice. She told me how it made her feel, that it was cold. Um, Let me look at some more questions. What did I learn about the innovative and creative lesson planning? I thought it was really good. I thought it was a great way for teachers to really plan um, what areas they really want to focus on. It gives us a good way of making sure we focus and hit those key vocabulary words, those key concepts that we want the children to really um, comprehend. What did I learn about myself? I learned that I can become really creative when I'm creating a lesson plan like this. I really like hands-on lessons for children. I think they learn better when they actually um, see what's happening and are actually able to play in play and touch and feel and hear all the different things that are going on, especially when it comes to science. Especially when it comes to science, I think this will help me in my future for creating lessons and activities for children. I think doing it this way. I think one of the things I liked was the scaffolding because I took Jazriel outside and we talked about how it was getting colder, the leaves were leaving from the trees, look at all the leaves on the ground, how the plants were not gonna they were going dormant, how they weren't gonna grow anymore. um, so that I really liked doing the scaffolding um, strategy when I was planning this lesson. um, I think Jazriel really liked it, especially the playing. She really loved playing in the snow. And one of the things is she hasn't been to the snow, so she doesn't really know what snow is other than from pictures and things like that. So she really got to, see what snow does. Um, she was engaged, but not as much as I think if it was older kids, they'd be a little bit more excited about the information that I was telling them. Giselle was more wanting to play. Um, what I learned about the language and literacy strategies that I chose was that, yeah, Jazriel was a little young for some of these vocabulary words I was using. Like, she didn't know what hibernation was, but I told her what it meant, temperature, and different things like that. So she was just a little young. I think, 4 and 5 year olds will be able to understand a little bit more. Um, and that was all. Everything went pretty well, like I said. So I really enjoyed this lesson. Thank you.